Hi! So I know I've been reviewing a lot of Marie Lu this past month or so because I did the last two Legend books, Prodigy and Champion, and now today I'm going to be doing The Young Elites, her new series, the first book in her new series, but I just love her so I'm going to read her books and I'm going to tell you about them, okay? So yeah, when I found out that she had a new book that had come out recently, kind of recently, I was super excited. I didn't even have to wait for this one after reading the Legend series because I read the Legend series so far after it was published. Though now I am waiting for the sequel, but I only have to wait until October, which isn't that bad when it comes to waiting for a book. This book, I'm gonna put out there, probably the best book I've read this calendar year. Not lying. If I Stay was my favorite book of 2014. So far, The Young Elites is my favorite book of 2015. It was amazing. So why do I think it was so amazing? Is it just because it's Marie Lu and I love her? No. I'll tell you why. Spoiler alerts. So starting with the characters. So the main character is Adelina. And she's very interesting. She would be the villain in like every other book. And actually, I saw an interview of her with the Christina from Xtina May channel. I'll put a link to that in the description, where she said that actually she didn't used to be the protagonist of this book. She was kind of like a side bad guy character, I think. But she didn't like the book as much when it was that way, and so she changed it and made this character the protagonist, which I think was really cool. You don't get a whole lot of books from the bad guy's point of view, and she is bad. It's not like she's misunderstood or something. I mean, a little bit, but there's definitely some genuine evil in her. There's something wrong where she gets pleasure from other people's pain, something wrong with her, and she knows it too. She knows that there's something wrong with her. She knows she shouldn't be feeling that way, but she does, which I think is really interesting. And she was definitely a really fun character to read about, but I would not want to be her friend. I don't think it's possible to be her friend. Yeah, wouldn't want to see her in real life, but she's a really cool character. So then there's Taran. He's also a really interesting character. I was really surprised that he was a young elite because he hates young elites. He hates, or Malfaitos as he would call them, he hates them. And so it's a really interesting kind of self-loathing, kind of showing how if you're raised thinking something that you're gonna like hate yourself for it maybe. Because he was always told, Malfaitos are bad and they're evil, especially if they have these powers. And then he ends up having them and he's like, trying to help them. It's really interesting. He's like, well, I'm going to send them back to hell where they belong. I'm trying to help them. But like, what about himself? Does he want to, after he kills all the other ones, is he gonna kill himself? Because he wants to be with the queen. It's very interesting. I wonder like how his logic works and kind of what his plan overall is. I definitely felt bad for him though, even though he's a really bad guy. Like, I don't feel like he was in the right in any way. He like kidnaps people's sisters and he kills people for like no reason. So I don't like him in any sense of the word, but I do feel bad for him. So there's Enzo. I don't really like him. He's a good character. There's no bad characters in this book, but there's a lot of characters I don't particularly like. Actually, all three of the ones I've talked about so far I don't really like as people. And Enzo's the same way. I feel like he doesn't actually care about other people than himself, which I don't think would make him the best king. I don't think he'll really be a better king than the king they already had. I think he kind of uses all of the young elites for his own gain, so to get back his crown. And he uses Adelina for the same reason, but also kind of as a makeshift girl that he used to love. I don't remember his like ex-girlfriend's name who like died. He's kind of using her for that as well, and I don't really like him. I was really surprised when he died though. Like, it happened so quickly that I almost didn't believe it had really happened. I thought that it was going to be something where like later it was like, oh no, he's actually alive, but he wasn't. But I do think he'll be back. I think it was at the end of this one, either that or I read like a sneak peek of the next one, I don't remember. But there was this girl who could bring people back from the dead who knew one of the young elites. I think they're going to go to her and try to bring Enzo back. But because we know it doesn't really work super well because her brother is kind of like a weird zombie-ish type of thing now, not really a real person. Gonna be interesting. I think that's gonna be like the plot of the second book on that side, like with the young elite side and not with the Adelina side. Adelina side obviously was doing their own thing. So then the last character I want to talk about is Raphael, and he's the only character I actually liked and would have wanted to spend time with. He seemed like a genuinely good person. I feel really bad for him though. I don't think he has the happiest life. I don't think he wants to be a consort. I think that's something he was sold into or had to do out of necessity. And Adelina, I don't think really seems to understand that. She's always like, oh, he's got like such great clothes and he gets to wear all this cool makeup and he gets to do these cool dances, and I don't think she even realizes exactly what the price for that is for him. It's very interesting. I feel he's a kind of a tragic character in that way. So then the story is very engrossing. I think I've read this pretty quickly, not quite as quickly as If I Stay, but fairly quickly, and I definitely recommend it to like everybody who I know. I've got like friends who I've told to read it, like everyone who I'm talking to, and I'm like, you want a book to read? Read this one, because it's so interesting. This story is great. I love the premise with like the blood fever, and then like a bunch of people died, and then the ones who are left had like markings, and now some of them are getting powers. That was really cool. Very unique idea. And yeah, just every little, like every time something happened in the story, I was like all for it. Like there was nothing I was like, that's weird, or I don't like that, or that doesn't make sense, plot hole, or anything like that. Nothing. Everything was just like great. I thought everything worked really well. So then the writing style. Of course, you know, I love Marie Lu's writing style. It's such a interesting world that she's creating this one. Even better, I think, than the world in the Legend series. It's really interesting because it's kind of like Renaissance era Italy, but it's like if Renaissance era Italy had had this happen to it, this is what the world would be like. But they have different gods, and what I thought was really interesting was every chapter began with like a quote, but it wasn't a quote from something in our world, it was a quote from something in their world. So that means that she must know a whole lot about their world to be able to like think of all of those things, which I think is really cool. And there's totally some stuff in there that like she's never gonna tell us, but she totally knows, and I think that's really cool. Just a very, very full, rich, and detailed world, but without getting bogged down in exposition like sometimes happens in things like The Lord of the Rings, where it just goes on and on and on explaining like a group of people or the landscape or the world or something like that. It doesn't do that. It just kind of happens by osmosis. You just get to learn about this world just from reading the story, the actual plot, which I thought was really good. And of course, she wrote so vividly, like you can see it happening. Like I'm surprised she doesn't write movie scripts, because she writes in a very visual style, which I think is really cool. I also really like the way that she wrote about the power. She wrote about things like, it's like you sense the energy that's like in the world, and you kind of grab onto that and you can make something happen. Like the girl who can control animals, she like gets the energy of the animal and like takes that into her power. Or like Enzo gets like fire or like heat energy and can make fire. And it seemed more realistic than a lot of magic is. You know, like a lot of times you have to like suspend your disbelief to be able to think, oh yeah, magic. But with this one, I actually felt like it could really happen, and it could really come from a disease. It felt very real to me. Very cool. So overall, you guys know I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars, which you know, if you've been watching my reviews, I never do. I never give 5 stars. I never give anything really higher than 4, hardly ever, because I'm always waiting for that like perfect book. And this one was that for me. It was really good, and I definitely recommend it to everybody. Like I can't think of anyone who wouldn't like this book. So go get it. Like I would buy it if I were you, and you know I don't buy books. I always borrow from the library, but this one is worth paying the 20 bucks or whatever it costs to buy a book, because I know I'll be reading it over and over again, and I can't wait for October to read the sequel, The Rose Society. So that's it for me today, and I will see you guys next week. Bye. Today is the last day in sequel month, and I'm going to finish it out with Champion by Marie Lu, the last book in the Legend series.